Here is my recap of Dexter Season 2, Episode 6, entitled Dex, Lies, and Videotape. Here we go. In this episode, a lot happens. Dexter ends up getting really close with Lila. We've got Deborah who gets close with Lundy, and Dexter pulls a fire alarm. All entwined in a crazy story. This was a crazy episode. A lot happens in this episode. And again, this is one of those episodes where you could really see that the writers spent a lot of time really weaving the story. In the beginning of this episode, Dexter is listening to more of the videotape or the audio, not videotape, but the audio of what happened with his mom and his dad. And that's kind of left in his office there where he works. Later on, Dokes ends up hearing this stuff and gets really mad at Dex, and they have some words together in the room. And Dexter then makes a formal complaint with LaGuerta. Now, LaGuerta is one thing I forgot to mention. We had a new person come in and take LaGuerta's job at the beginning of the season. A lot of crazy stuff happened. I really didn't follow up with that storyline, but the short version of that storyline is that that particular person couldn't trust her boyfriend. They had a relationship, and she was basically going crazy because she thought her boyfriend was cheating behind her back. And in the end, it's what got her to leave the job. She got so crazy with it, she couldn't handle it, and she was kind of thrown out, and LaGuerta was put back in her job. And then what you find out is that it was actually LaGuerta's doing. She's the one that had the relationship with her boyfriend, her fiance, that the new boss's fiance, to eventually have this break her so that she could get her old job back. So she's not a very good person. At the same time, you find out that there's record of the video camera that was taking video of the harbor. And Dexter's trying to get this away, trying to delete it somehow, but it's constantly being monitored. And he finds out that the footage has not been actually uploaded for anybody to see because the technology is not communicating with each other, and that would be happening in the next couple of days. So when they finally do start going through it, they're getting close to the video where it's going to show him on the boat, and he pulls a fire alarm there in the police department to get everybody out, and he ends up deleting it so they can't find it. So he's protecting himself. There's also a copycat Bay Harbor butcher in this episode, and that individual tries to kill somebody in a shipyard. They bring in the FBI, and Dexter actually is asked to go along, but Lundy actually specifically asks him to go along. And there's a scene where Dexter has a conversation with him in the car where this supposedly took place, and they talk about how this is not the MO of the Bay Harbor butcher. And Lundy then really reveals some information that nobody knows, that the Bay Harbor butcher actually wraps their victims in saran wrap. And Dexter's very curious as to how he knows this. And he kind of tells him, based on the evidence and the impressions on the body. And so there are these weird conversations with Lundy and Dexter in regards to the Bay Harbor butcher. So that is where kind of that ends up leading. And there is a scene in this episode where Dexter does hunt down the guy who's been kind of trying to imitate him and ends up killing him, and reveals to the guy that he doesn't have to kill him, that actually Lila has helped him break free of having the need to kill, but he wants to. And he's living that part of himself out now, and he's doing under his terms, not just his father's terms. You can find out that he's kind of upset with his father overall for following his code, not following what he wants to do. Now, he still plans on killing bad people, but he wants to be able to do it on his terms. And he does end up killing this guy and actually leaving the body there for the FBI to find, so that the trail then goes cold on Dexter again, and they're more focused on, that stuff than more focused on him personally and what's going on at the harbor. So at the same time, we've got a love triangle going on with Rita and Dexter's sponsor, Lila. Lila comes to dinner. There's a scene with Dexter on the beach with Rita and her mom, and he says, I have to go. I'm 10 minutes late for meeting my sponsor. And that's when Rita's mom says, why don't you guys come over? We'll all have dinner together. So they do. And during that dinner, Lila almost reveals that Dexter had told her about his mom being killed. And this is something Rita doesn't know. Rita knows nothing about Dexter's history. So after that, Rita actually tells Dexter, let's go back to your apartment. We'll make love. So they get there. and they start to make love, and that's when Lila calls Dexter's number and says, hey, I'm glad, I'm really sorry about bringing up the stuff about your mother. Oh, she would die if she found out that we went on this trip together, type of thing. And Rita hears all this and gets really mad at Dexter and kicks him out. He then immediately goes over to Lila's house, and he's kind of going out of his mind because of everything that's happening. And he ends up having sex with Lila right there in that moment. Later on, Rita calls and says, hey, come back over. We'll talk about this. So they do. It's at that point where Rita says, I'm sorry I kicked you out before. I didn't get your side of it. And Dexter tells her, you had nothing to worry about. We went on this trip as sponsor and sponsee. We had separate rooms. We did not sleep together. Nothing happened on that road. She goes, so tell me one thing, did you have sex with her that night? And that's when he said, not that night. And so this really upsets Rita, and Rita kicks Dexter out. And the very last scene is Dexter going back over to Lila's house. Now, there's a little bit with Lundy and with Deborah, Dexter's sister. Dexter's sister, it gets kind of close with Lundy during that scene where they're at the railroad park and they're doing the investigation. He kind of goes off to make a phone call. Then Deborah goes over there and they actually hug each other. She actually thinks the investigation's over because the guy who was imitating the Bay Harbor Butcher was caught. And Lundy says, no, the investigation is not over. We're still going to go and search for him. And that's when Deborah actually embraces Lundy and they have a moment, which could possibly lead to something coming up in future episodes. So we've got a lot of different little story threads going on. There's a lot still left to be had in this season. We're going to find out if Dexter gets caught by the police. We're going to find out what Dokes does. So I got to follow up on what I was talking about at the beginning. LaGuerta gets her job back, right? Well, Dexter and Dokes have that moment in the office. And that's when Dexter immediately goes to LaGuerta and says, I want to file a formal complaint with Dokes. He's been following me, and gave all these examples of things that he's been doing. And LaGuerta says, please hold off until I can talk to him. So LaGuerta does have a conversation with Dokes, and Dokes says, there's something funny about Dexter. And so there are some suspicions being raised, and those will be addressed also in upcoming episodes. So there's my overall recap. A lot of different things going on in this season, but they're all going to lead. These seasons get better and better as time goes on. So we're going to see how this ramps up in the second half of the season. This actually ends the halfway point of season 2. So there's my review of Dexter season 2, episode 6, entitled Dex, Lies, and Videotape. I appreciate everybody who's watching. Hopefully you're enjoying these recaps. Please hit the like button on this video. Hit that subscription button as well and the notification bell, and you will be notified when new videos go up.